In 1804, on the peaceful land of Tennessee, John Bell, together with his wife Lucy and their children, left North Carolina to begin a new life. After many days of traveling, they stopped at Red River, a place with fertile soil, lush forests, and a quiet river flowing all year round. It was an ideal land to settle down, and the Bell family quickly built a wooden house, expanded their farm, planted crops, and raised livestock. Life went on peacefully for many years, making the Bell home one of the most prosperous and respected places in the area. However, one night, that peace was broken by a strange sound. While John was dozing after a long day of work, he suddenly heard a faint knocking on the outside wall of the house. At first, he thought it was just a branch hitting the wall in the wind or a small animal. But when he stepped out to check, there was only silence, eerie and unsettling. The following night, the knocking returned, this time clearer and more rhythmic, as if someone was deliberately knocking on the door. Gradually, it turned into scratching sounds, screeching across the wooden surface, keeping everyone in the house awake night after night. In the days that followed, the situation grew worse. John's eldest son claimed he heard heavy footsteps on the porch, slow and dragging, but when he rushed outside, the porch was empty, not a soul in sight. Lucy insisted that every time she entered the kitchen, she heard the clinking of metal, as if someone were striking a spoon against the iron pot, though the kitchen door was always locked. At first, John tried to reassure his family that these were only ordinary occurrences. But one night, while the family was having supper, loud barking erupted in the yard. John hurried outside, carrying his hunting rifle. In the dim moonlight, he saw a strange creature, its body like a dog, but its head resembled that of a rabbit, with glowing red eyes like burning coals. In the blink of an eye, the creature vanished, leaving behind an atmosphere so heavy it was suffocating. From that moment, bizarre events occurred one after another. Some family members saw a giant shadow glide over the roof, resembling a monstrous bird. Others saw the figure of a young girl in a white dress, standing silently at the edge of the forest, only to dissolve into nothingness. These were no longer fleeting illusions, for several family members witnessed them at the same time. The house that once overflowed with laughter now became a hell of eerie sounds. Each night, knocking echoed across the walls, dragging noises rumbled from ceiling to floor, and even the sound of sighs whispered beside their pillows. The children woke in terror, screaming when their blankets were ripped away, or when an invisible hand gripped their wrists tightly. Most of all, little Betsy suffered the worst. Once, she screamed in agony as her hair was yanked so hard that patches of her scalp turned red. On her cheek were the distinct marks of a slap, as if struck by an unseen hand. John Bell, once strong and steadfast, now began to show exhaustion and fear. He tried to hide his worries, but even he could clearly feel it. In this house, they were no longer alone. Some force was present, lurking in the shadows, growing bolder by the day. Although they wanted to keep silent to avoid gossip, the Bell family could no longer conceal it. The terrifying noises grew so loud that even neighbors could hear them. Some close friends were invited to witness the events firsthand. And horrifically, that very night, they too heard invisible footsteps, knocking at the door, and even chilling laughter coming from an empty corner of the room. Rumor spread quickly across Tennessee. The Bell house was haunted. Some said it was the ghost of a woman once offended by the Bell family. Others believed the land itself had been cursed long ago. But whatever the reason, everyone knew, within that house, there was an unseen force full of rage. The most horrifying moment came when the first whispers were heard. At night, while the family huddled together by the oil lamp, a vague voice drifted out of nowhere. At first, it sounded like the wind, but gradually, it grew clearer, turning into songs, laughter, and finally, calling out each family member by name. There was no longer any doubt. This was a spirit with awareness. From then on, the villagers gave it a name that sent shivers through all of Red River, the Bell Witch. In the following days, Betsy was tormented relentlessly. She was dragged out of bed, beaten until her body was bruised, and many times fainted from pain. John Bell himself was not spared. He often suffered seizures, gasping as though an invisible hand was strangling him. The house was drenched in an atmosphere of death. Cries, screams, and mocking laughter blended together, making it the very center of horror in the region. People said that one night, the eerie voice even spoke out, mocking, "I will never leave this place until your family is destroyed." From that moment, the Bell family's tragedy began. Once a happy, wealthy, and respected household, they became prey to an invisible force. The first chapters of the Bell Witch legend were written in blood, tears, and the unending terror of those who lived in the small wooden house by the Red River. And that was only the beginning. Part 2, The Strange Noises begin. On the vast land of the Bell family in the remote Tennessee wilderness of the early 19th century, their two-story wooden house stood tall like a small fortress amidst the wild nature. Winter then cast its chill across the fields, mist mingling with the north wind, and when the sun set, darkness rushed in to swallow every corner of the farm. It was in this seemingly peaceful setting that the first strange phenomena began to appear, sounds that no one could explain. At first, they were only vague noises, easy to mistake for ordinary sounds in an old house. One night, when John Bell, the father of the family, had just blown out the oil lamp, a clack-clack echoed from somewhere in the wooden hallway. He thought it was only the wood contracting as the temperature dropped. But a few days later, those sounds began to occur more frequently, precisely when nightfall arrived. Lucy, his wife, heard them too. She said that many times, while preparing dinner, she heard faint tapping on the wall, as if someone was knocking with their fingertips. At first, she thought it must be the cat climbing onto the roof, or a branch brushing against the house. But when Lucy stepped outside to check, the air was still, no branches close enough, and the cat was curled up by the hearth. Their children, Betsy, the youngest daughter, and her 3 older brothers, also began whispering among themselves about the strange noises. Betsy was the most sensitive. She said she often heard rustling under her bed late at night. Sometimes she felt her blanket being tugged gently. Her brothers reassured her, "It's just mice, Betsy." Yet even they were startled at times when a sharp knock rattled the window pane, though when they opened it, only thick darkness stared back. The noises did not stop at being annoying. They grew more distinct, as though an invisible hand was deliberately trying to draw attention. Many nights, the entire family heard heavy pounding on the front door, loud enough to shake the wooden frame. John would take up his gun, step outside, and shine his lantern across the yard, but found nothing except absolute silence. Another night, while Lucy was sewing by the oil lamp, 3 sharp knocks struck the wall right beside her. She jumped, pricking her finger, so that blood welled up. John rushed over, pressing his ear to the wall, but it was only cold and still. These sounds became part of the Bell family's daily life. At first, they still tried to find reasonable explanations, perhaps wild animals, perhaps the wind slipping through cracks, or simply the creaking of the old house. But as the occurrences grew more frequent and persistent, ordinary reasons lost all meaning. Fear began to creep in. By day, the Bells still worked hard in the fields, tending livestock and crops. But once darkness fell, they gathered close around the fireplace, tense and listening. Every knock made them hold their breath. One beat, then 2, sometimes coming from behind them, sometimes from the ceiling above. It felt as though an unseen guest lived in the house, playing tricks, determined to shatter their peace. The story grew more terrifying when the sounds began to move. At first they stayed near the west wall, then spread into the bedrooms and parlor. Some nights, the knocking traveled along the hallway, like slow steps made with a wooden cane. John tried everything, scattering flour around the house to check for footprints, setting traps everywhere, even letting the hunting dog sleep on the porch. But whenever the noises came, the dogs whimpered, their fur bristling, retreating to a corner as if terrified by something invisible. Betsy, the youngest daughter, was the most haunted. Many nights, she screamed aloud, claiming she heard whispering right next to her ear, though she was alone in the room. The whispers were unclear, sometimes like a woman, sometimes like a child, yet never forming words. Lucy held her tightly, comforting her, though inside she was chilled. She knew this was no longer a matter of mice or wind. One late autumn evening, while the family was gathered together, pounding suddenly erupted, rapid and violent, strong enough to rattle the dishes on the table. The oil lamp flickered and went out. In the darkness, Betsy cried out, "It's here!" John fumbled to relight the lamp, but his face was pale, his hands trembling. For the first time, he, the stern man who had once fought in war, was truly afraid. After that night, the Bells began to realize they were no longer facing strange noises. There was something intelligent present, something watching them, and more importantly, it wanted them to know it was there. Rumor spread, and neighbors began whispering. Some came at night out of curiosity, and indeed they too heard the knocking. One even swore he saw a white figure glide past the window. The more witnesses there were, the harder it became to dismiss the story. In the nights that followed, the noises changed, no longer only knocking or pounding, but at times shrill screeches, dragging footsteps, even mocking laughter. These were sounds that did not belong to the human world, and when darkness fell, the entire farm seemed seized by an unseen power. The Bell family began to understand this was only the beginning. Those strange noises were a warning, a herald of the long nightmare they were destined to face. And the name Bell, which gradually appeared in whispers, like a fate entwined with their doom from that very night.